Good day to each and everyone. This is Liza Jadormeo from BSED English 1A. And in today's topic, I want to discuss to you about relations among cultural identity, motivation for language learning, and perceived English language proficiency for international students in the United States. As two important factors for international students in adoption, international students cannot be ignored. The purpose of this study was to examine cultural identity, English relations of cultural identity to language learning for international proficiency, motivation students, and measures of cultural identity, motivations for language learning and self-perceived language proficiency using path analysis to two important findings emerge. So there are two important findings emerge. So these two is the ethnic identification and the American identification. The present study examine relations among cultural identity, motivation, and English language proficiency in international students studying in the United States. Overall, consistent with previous research, the findings indicated that cultural identity predicted motivation in language learning and language proficiency. Although whether ethnic identity or American identity was the significant predictor varied across outcome variables, especially stronger ethnic identity was associated with greater motivation for learning English and lower English proficiency, whereas American identity was associated with greater language learning motivation. So the Korean study found that motivation was a significant predictor of self-perceived English proficiency. Motivation also meditate the effects of ethnic and American identity and English proficiency, consistent with a two-dimensional model of acculturation. Ethnic identity and American identity were unrelated to one another and had distinct correlations to language-related variables. So hypotheses were tested using path analysis. Multiple indices were evaluated to assess model fit, including chi-square, root mean square, error and approximation, or RMC, SEA, comparative fit index, or CFI, and standardized root mean square radical, or SRMR, for global fit and absolute correlation, residuals for local fit. So demonstrated that RMSEA values below 0.85 conducted the path analysis. We use smart DS test to determine whether these variables followed a multivariate normal distribution. The results showed that the assumption of multivariate normality was not violated. The present study used R3.6.1 and Lovan package in R 14, 2019, Russell, and 2012 for all data analysis. So in conclusion, this study provides a new perspective on the relations between cultural identity and language learning among international students. To our knowledge, the present study in the first to examine the combined influences of cultural identity and motivation and language proficiency using a quantitative method. So furthermore, although previous researchers had found a direct association of identity with language proficiency, little is known about the mechanism underlying this relation. Thus, birth-treating motivation is an important mediator of the relationship between cultural identity and second language fluency. And our study gives new insight and indicates avenues for future researcher. So makahatag ni siya og daghang sa mga future researchers is makahatag ni siya og daghan na pagtulunan or something like that. There are two additional suggestions for the future research. First is mentioned above, identity is dynamic, so longitudinal design are needed for further explore and processes of identity change. For example, does American identification increase the longer students spend in the US? Or in response to certain educational or social experiences, diba? So second is future research should examine the differences across student population, international students and domestic students who also speak English as a second language. So dako gud kay ni siya og tabang para sa mga domestic helper or domestic students nga nilarga sila yung nasod and kanang mo speak og lain nga mga languages like English or Japanese, Chinese, like nana. So both the module and the research promotes the importance of language learning and how it is necessary to have as a subject to learn to. And that's all. Thank you. Bye-bye. How to stop the